All right, so midterm lab, yay! It's not going to be anything new or foreign to you outside of some options that we're going to look at here in just a minute. So you'll have all the information that you need to be able to do this without too much stress. So this is not really going to be something that you have to do here. It's like all the other assignments. Just take it home, do it, or do it here if you want to. That's fine. That's fine as well. The real restriction here is that both of these machines that you're creating this week have to be new. As in, keep your old ones because we'll keep doing those. Or trash your old one and use this Windows, to, at least Windows, right? Trash your old Windows and move along with this new Windows VM that we're creating here. But at least, yes, for temporarily, you're going to need new VMs for this midterm lab. So if you're really hurting for space, yeah, storage-wise, you'll probably want to like export out some of your VMs. I can show you how to do that if you're hurting for space. Before you dive into this lab, check your machine. Make sure you've got, I don't know, 50 gigs-ish or so of space. Windows tends to be pretty large, right? Like 20, 30 gigs. And Linux not so much, maybe like 8. So 50 gigs is a pretty good starting spot. If you got more than that, great. If you got less than that, you're going to be coming up to it pretty quick. So be careful on that. What's that? I'm sorry? Oh, like 20, 30 gigs for Windows and 8 gigs for Linux. So, I mean, if you've got about 50 gigs free, then you're good. All right. So the Windows 10 VM, the ISO for it, download it here. I've also got it on disk here if you want it. And then Fedora 30 as well. We're coming up to the end of life on this version. Fedora 31's already out, but this thing is Fedora 30 is still current, so we'll use that as well. So nothing new. I won't go through all of this because there's already a video of me doing all of this stuff anyway. So go back, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks, and watch that video for setting up the paging file. But that's probably the hardest thing that you got to do in this whole thing. The rest of it is really just practice on installing Windows, to be honest. So install Windows using the entire disk. Pop the ISO in, start the VM, install on the whole disk. Use the Express settings on first boot. I'm not going to check that. So if for some reason you'd rather not use Express and you want to turn off some of those options, please go ahead and do so. That's not a grading point, so don't worry too much about that. And then create a local account, and you'll do that like this, right? Click Join a Domain, click Next, create the local account, and then just never join a domain. That's the easiest way to get an account without having to like tie it to a Microsoft account or something. So yeah, avoid that. And then, yeah, make sure you have the right disk size, right RAM size, right amount of CPUs, right? 2 CPUs, 2 gigs of RAM, 40 gig disk. And we're going to verify that a little later. Then, or we'll verify that with that. Open a command prompt, do who am I? This will give me an idea of how you set things up. And then open up Task Manager. But in the lab where we did this, there were some people that still, even after me imploring you to do so, did not open up the apps, right? Like Edge. Like you can't take a screenshot without Edge being on the screenshot, right? Like otherwise it'll be wrong. Because like the whole thing is open Edge and 3 tabs, right? So make sure you do that. And then I want to see what kind of RAM usage Edge is using. So highlight that, circle it, whatever you want to do, just point to it somehow so I can find out whether or not you can look at RAM usage of a specific app. And then paging file, right? Set that up where the initial size is 1 gig and the max size is 4 gigs. Take a screenshot. And then as we did in the previous lab, I don't have it written out, but just don't set that. You don't have to set that. Just take a screenshot of the step before you click set. So put the numbers in the boxes, take a screenshot, and then cancel everything. That's the idea with that. Linux. Set up the same basic stuff So you're starting with a 20 gig disk. So the root partition of Linux is going to be 16 gigs. So root, what is that? How do you set root? We did that in Linux Mint when we were setting it up. What indicates root? Yeah, when you're setting up those partitions, right? It's close. You can ls this thing. Root in Linux file systems. Ooh. See, now that it's the midterm, I can't tell you. If one of you yells it out, I'll be like, yeah. So root. So I'm saying manually install Fedora's root partition. That's after you get into the OS. If you run lshw, that will show you the hardware of the system, but that's not this. It might even show you the disk partition itself. I know it will. It will definitely show you the disk partition that is 16 gigs, but how do you set it 16 gigs in the first place? So when you're going in, you click on a disk, you say, I want it to be 16 gigs, but you want what to be 16 gigs? How do you say that? So in Mint, it was like 2 labs ago. How do you tell it? Because we were creating swap partition, right? Swap partition and the root partition. How did you designate the root partition? Because on swap, you literally took... Yeah, so on swap, you bring that drop-down box and you choose swap, right? What about the other one? How do you do that? How did you do that? I'm assuming everybody submitted that homework. You do, but you're manually designating it. So what did you type in the box? That meant that's Windows. // That's the one. That's the one. So you'll do the same thing in Fedora. I'm gonna boot up Fedora. I'm gonna go through some of this so you know the difference between the GUI. It just looks different, but the idea is identical. So anyway, like I said, the menu is just different. So anyway, I don't care whether you choose standard or LVM partitioning. This is going to be something that comes up mostly in Fedora because it's all in the same box. In Mint, you had to check the box that said use LVM, and I cautioned you guys away from that so you wouldn't have noticed it. But in Fedora, it's all in one box, so you kind of have to read between, or you have to actually read the boxes, which is something you should be doing anyway. So create a swap partition using the remaining space. So 20 minus 16 leaves you with 4, right? So 4 gigs of swap. And then create a local account. First name dash last name. And then, so same screenshots, right? Well, mostly same screenshots. Screenshot of VirtualBox. Make sure you have everything set up correctly on the VM. Type in who am I so I can verify that username. Start Firefox and then go to those same 3 tabs. And then open up the system monitor so that you can find the RAM usage of Mozilla Firefox. Circle that, highlight it, however you want to, just designate it somehow. And then show me LSBLK. So where that screenshot will show me paging file, this will show me swap. So same basic screenshots, but the operating systems are a little different. So it looks a little different. So the idea with Fedora, I probably should have booted that up prior to all this, but you know, hindsight's 20/20 and all. So we'll go through this. Actually, I don't know how much RAM I've got left. I don't have WebEx, so yeah, we're good. That's plenty. So I won't do the work for you. You guys have to punch the right numbers into the box without blindly following every single one of my steps and not knowing what you're doing. You know, the normal stuff. Images, Fedora, workstation. So when you guys are going to download Fedora, make sure you get the workstation. It's the desktop one, comes with the GUI. Fedora server does not. So when you get it, like the installation will be, actually, you know what? It doesn't even matter. Because by the time you get logged in, you're only running a command. Oh, no, it does. It totally does matter. You can't run Firefox in server. So Yeah, Fedora Workstation. When you're going to download it, make sure you get Workstation. So while that's booting up, I'll show you what that looks like. So start Fedora Live. So when you go to Fedora 30 ISO, oh, okay. So it's straight up a link to it. So never mind. It won't make any difference. Just click that link, download it. It'll start the download for you automatically. Yes, Workstation Live. That's correct. Now, I'm not positive. Just double check that you have 30 and not 31. I'm not positive what I'm about to show you is exactly the same in 31. 30, correct. Yeah, I think that is right. That is right. So while this is all starting up and everything, Fedora has a different lineage than Mint and Ubuntu tend to. So Ubuntu comes from Debian, a Linux distribution that was created back in the early 90s and had a huge commitment to freedom, as in free as in beer, right? As in you can get one for free, and then free as in freedom, as in not only can you take this software and code and everything else and run it, you can also change it and redistribute it however you want. I think the biggest restriction on that is that if you take it and redistribute it, it also has to keep the same license. That's the only real restriction. So you get it for free, and then if you redistribute it, it also has to continue to be free. Fedora has a very similar commitment. Everything that comes with Fedora is supposed to be free. So there is nothing by default installed in Fedora that is not free, and in both senses, right? Free as in beer and free as in freedom. But it comes from a bit of a different heritage. Fedora comes from Red Hat, and Red Hat is probably one of the most enterprisey, definitely the most money-makingest Linux distribution of all time. And the way that they do that, right? Red Hat's also free in a way. Everything that Red Hat does, they submit the code out for free, right? So if you want to take the time and compile it all together, you can have Red Hat for free. And it turns out there's a group that does this. Their name is CentOS. So they take Red Hat, all of its binaries, recompile it, and redistribute it. It's all free. So all this enterprise stuff that runs the entire world, it's all free. It's really interesting. Because then the question of, well, how do you make money off of free comes up, right? Services. So you basically charge to help people set it up and help people manage it. And when people get in and over their heads, they call you and pay you a monthly fee so that you can fix the things that they don't understand, right? So lots of money to be made. Anyhow, just some basic background. Red Hat and Debian are not cross-compatible. They are both Linux underneath, but overall, you can't download a Red Hat binary and run it in Debian-based systems. It just doesn't work. So, anyhow, here is the Fedora 30 installer. So as you get started, same basic questions that you got in Linux Mint, right? English, English. Continue on. And I'm running on a spinning disk, so this is going to be not the fastest thing in the world. And there really aren't a whole lot of questions, right? It auto-detects your time zone if you have the internet, which on a VM you probably should, unless your laptop does not. But installation, destination, this is really where you need to pay attention. So you can see the size of the disk, and you're going to want to do some custom configuration to this, because you want a specific size of some things. So when you hit done, it starts to ask you some questions like, well, what kind of mount points do you want? So standard partition is what we're used to. This is what we did in Linux Mint. So if you want the closest thing to Linux Mint that you can possibly get to keep questions to a minimum, and this is totally up to you. I don't care if you have a bunch of questions. Then choose standard partition. So feel free to ask questions on this midterm of things that we have not covered. So if you choose LVM and you just want to dive into that, then I'll answer any question that you want about LVM. I won't define what the root is and what swap is, right? Those are things that we've already covered. But LVM, something we never covered. So if you choose that, okay, we'll talk about it. But at least for this demo as well, standard partition. Then hit plus, choose your mount point. Yeah, looks familiar, hopefully. And then however big you want it to be. Right? Now, I'm not being very accurate with these numbers, so be aware. And then that's it, right? Dev SDA1, Dev SDA2. Cool, cool, cool. Always freaks me out. It takes a little while for it to figure things out. There it goes. And then it's going to give you an idea. It's going to give you the order in which it's going to do things, and it's going to do all those things that you said that you wanted it to do. So at this point, as long as you're pretty confident, hit accept. At least slightly confident, right? And then it's going to do its thing. And then at this point, you can begin the install. And it'll start asking you the rest of the questions after the installation, right? So creating that user account, all of that fun stuff, that happens after the fact. So if you make really bad choices during the partitioning setup, you're going to be in a situation where it never gets to the point where it asks you your username because it'll never boot, right? So as long as you have those same basic partitions that we created in Mint, it'll work here in Fedora as well. The big thing with this is I wanted to show you guys that while Linux is all the same at the heart, underneath everything, when you pull back all of the, or when you open up the hood, right? It's all an engine with oil and everything else. But when you get into the car, the dashboard, it's different. Even from model to model, it's different. So just so you know what other, what is this, like installer software things. This is called Anaconda, by the way. Not that you'll need to know that. But yeah. The installer that you guys used in Linux Mint was called Ubiquity. Not that you need to know that. I'll never test you on that. But just for your information. Ubiquity and Anaconda. So once this is done, it'll reboot. And it will reboot straight into GNOME, which is a different user interface than you're used to. So if you guys are familiar with opening up the start menu in Windows or opening up Launchpad, I think it is, and then just typing in words to search for what you want, that's exactly how GNOME works. Click on the activities or press the Windows key and type in what you want. If you want System Monitor, hit the Windows key or the Command key and type in system, and it'll figure out the rest, right? If you haven't gotten into the habit of doing that in Windows, you probably should. Every file is indexed, everything. So if you want, the list of your favorite restaurants, you can open up the start menu and type in rest, and there's a good chance that restaurant.doc will show up, right? So GNOME and Launchpad in general tend to do this as well. And if not, I think you can do it in Finder. So either way, the idea of searching for files has been pretty baked into operating systems for a while. So take advantage of it. It'll save you from having to dig through 12 different directories in your documents folder to find whatever it is that you want. You just got to have a little bit of information about the file that you're looking for. So anyhow, long story short, I'll cut the video here. After it reboots, like I said, it'll just it'll let you start choosing all of the stuff that you want, and then it will drop you into the interface. But that'll do it. If you have any questions as you get into the interface, if it really just does not make sense to you or something like that, I'm not testing you on GNOME. I'm more just testing you on whether or not you can open up those applications and get to places. So If GNOME is confusing, just ask. I'll show you how to deal with that. Because again, GNOME is not the test at all. Linux in general is. So anyhow, that'll do it.